Hello, this is a short video presentation on solving equations that have fractions. This is just really a continuation of what we did on the last video, but we're going to deal with fractions now. I know we don't necessarily like fractions, but they're kind of cute, so we need to deal with them. It's really very simple. There's three basic steps. One, find the least common denominator. We find the least common denominator when we add fractions. Just find it here. In this case, it's 6. Multiply each term by the least common denominator, and then solve. Very simple. So in this problem, our least common denominator is 6. All right? So I'm going to multiply by 6. 6 over 1, I don't need to do that. 6 times x, I'll do it like this, minus 6 over 1 times 23 over 6, minus 6 over 1 times 1/3 x equals 6 over 1 times -4/3. All right, quick question. Why did I put the -4/3 in parentheses? Well, this is multiplication here, and I don't want to confuse it with subtraction. And when over here, there's no problem, but here, when I have this minus, I could make a mistake. Much, much better to use parentheses, and actually, I don't need this right there. It's much better to use parentheses. All right, now we multiplied, and the reason we did that is that cancels. 3 goes into 6 twice. 3 goes into 6 twice. And I end up with 6x minus 23 minus 2 times 1x is 2x equals 2 times -4 is -8. And then we solve. We're not going to actually solve this in the video. You know how to solve equations. It should be pretty simple. I'll tell you the answer, but we're not going to actually do the work. The answer to this problem then is 15/4. Hopefully you actually did it on your own in your notes, but you know how to solve equations now. I don't need to go through this. When we have problems like this, I will not ask you to do a check. I will not ask you to do a check. All right. Next problem. What is the least common denominator? The least common denominator here is 60. 60 is divisible by 4. It's divisible by 15. And 60 is divisible by 5. All right? Least common denominator is the smallest number divisible by all of those. So we're going to have 60 over 1 times plus 60 over 1. I like using different colors, equals 60 over 1. All right, it's times 5/4 x plus 60 over 1 times 26/15. 60 over 1 times 3/5 x. And 4 goes into 60 15 times. 15 goes into 60 4 times. And 5 goes into 60 12 times. And we end up with 5 times 15, 75x plus 104 equals 12 times 3, 36x. And then we solve. And again, I'm not going to waste video time solving it, but you should do this and should see if you can come up with the answer on your own. All right, the answer then turns out to be negative 104 over 39, which reduces to negative 8/3. This is our final answer. Now, a couple notes here about using negatives with fractions. You can write that as negative in front of the fraction bar. You can write it as negative 8 divided by 3. But you cannot write it like this. That is not allowed. Negative number does not belong in the denominator, ever. All right, we're going to do one more that involves distribution, just because it's kind of fun. All right, here's our beastly problem. Kind of crazy, but I think we can handle it. What we want to do first, before we do what we did in the last two examples, is to actually distribute this. I need to distribute negative 5/2. It's the easiest way to do it. So I'm going to rewrite this as negative 2/3 x minus five halves times negative 10/3 x minus, because negative times positive is negative, 5/2 times 5/3 equals negative 31. Now, before I multiply, cancel if you can. You can't always, but it's a good rule to cancel. So 2 goes into negative 10, negative 5. Now, sometimes it's going to help, and sometimes it's not really worth it. But good rule of thumb is to always cancel. So we end up with negative 2/3 x. Oh yeah, by the way, when we multiply, remember, multiply numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator. So the 2 became a 1. Negative times negative, positive. 5 times 5, 25, over 1 times 3 is 3, x minus 25 over 6 equals negative 31. Least common denominator equals 6. So I have 6, 6, 6, 6. 6 times negative 2/3 x plus 6 times 25/3 x minus 6 times 25/6 equals 6 times negative 31. And I suppose for a lot of us, it makes it a little simpler if we use over 1. And then we're almost done. 3 goes into 6 2 times. 3 goes into 6 2 times. 6's cancel. And we're left with 2 times negative 2, negative 4x plus 50x minus 25 equals negative 186. And then we solve. I'll give you the answer because you should solve this on your own, but you know how to solve. So, all right. And the answer then turns out to be negative 161 over 46, which reduces to negative 7/2. And that's our answer. Remember, find the least common denominator, and after you've found the least common denominator, multiply every term. Distribute first if possible, but multiply every term by that. All right, have a great day, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.